DeMar DeRozan, welcome to Bullseye. I'm so happy to have you on the show, and I enjoyed reading your book so much.
Man, thank you for having me, and it means a lot, about the book. It was tough. I never knew being involved with a book would be so, difficult, but, it's an honor. It means a lot.
I feel like everyone I know who's written a book, they come out of it at the end like, why did I agree to write a book? Like, I just spent 5 years of my life writing that book.
Yeah. I could understand it for sure, but I think hearing stuff like that makes it feel good, make it all worth it.
You're here in front of me, Los Angeles out. You have on a shirt with Mookie Betts on it. You got it on it's backwards, but I think that's a Dodgers hat.
Yeah, for sure.
That matches.
Yeah.
You got white sneakers to match there.
Yeah.
And you're in Angelino.
Yeah.
Do you live full time in LA?
Yeah. Off season, spend most of my time here. Work out here, family here, still home. Being in the league, going to my 16th year, home is always going to be home. So, I always got to make it back to LA.
Yeah, it's one of those things like, as I was reading your book and thinking about, you went to college in LA as well, but like you got drafted by the Toronto Raptors, which is as far away as you can go and be playing American professional basketball. And I just thought, what a change that must have been in your life to like get out of an airplane in a foreign country,
Listen, I just had this conversation the other day with a couple guys of, part of the reason why I stayed home was the reality that I told myself was like, this may be my last opportunity to play home, because if I get drafted, it's a good chance. At the time, Lakers was good. Nobody really was trying to go to the Clippers at that time. So, I'm looking at it like, this is probably my last opportunity to play home, not knowing I would be going to another country. But it was a positive for me as well, because it took me out of my comfort zone and my element and kind of forced me to grow up a little bit faster. Because, before I got drafted to Toronto, a couple days before, I just got my passport for the first time, and
I mean, there's a detail in your book, which is that like you had to take that flight by yourself.
By myself.
Because there wasn't anybody else in your family that had a passport.
Yeah. And it was like a reality check for me that I didn't realize I needed until it happened. It kind of helped you grow fast, understand responsibilities, and, take a look at life from a different perspective than, what I was already comfortable doing. I
mean, one of the details that jumped out at me in your book is you're describing that flight to Toronto, and I was going to get to Toronto, take a tour of the facilities, and do half a day of media interviews.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought, here's a dude showing up to a foreign country for work for his first day.
Yeah.
Hasn't even met his teammates, hasn't met his, maybe you had met somebody at the draft or something, but or had a phone call, but you're showing up to work in your first day of work as a 19-year-old is they walk you around the basketball court and then they sit you down for half a day of interviews.
Yes, it was definitely overwhelming because, literally the night before I was drafted, literally early in the morning, get on a flight. Now I'm in a whole new country. I got a suit on, I think it was my second time in my life. Before that, obviously the draft wearing a suit, but wearing another suit the next day. It was overly overwhelming. Then to be doing it by yourself, not looking around, having somebody that, that's familiar to you, whether if it's a friend or a family, it was new. Everything was so new for me. But, like I said, I needed it. It helped me grow up extremely fast.
I was thinking about your upbringing in Los Angeles as I was reading the book. And there's these two kind of incredible directions that your life was pointed when you were a kid. One was, you're in Compton, it's a rough scene. You have friends and family members caught up in violence and, have to live with that on a day-to-day basis. You also live in the Los Angeles that people see in movies. And, you were a great basketball player. You had an uncle who was a sort of community organizer. And so you were also like at Penny Marshall's house going swimming sometimes as a teenager. And I synthesizing those two things was really hard for me to wrap my head around. The idea that you had this life at home and then starting as a young teenager, this crazy other life where one of your closest friends was Romeo Miller, at the time, Lil Romeo,
Yeah. Man, it was such a high and low at times for me because, the reality of it at the end of the day, I got to make my way back to Compton. I got to wake up the next morning and go to school in Compton. I got to walk to school. I'm dealing with the aggressiveness that my reality was, Monday through Friday, but having an opportunity on Saturday or Sundays to go by, one of my close friends, Romeo Miller house. That's a mansion with a pool overlooking, Beverly Hills.
DeMar, I remember when there was a Master P Cribs that involved showing Romeo's personal tiny Land Rover, I think it was.
Exactly.
This is the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life.
1,000%. And it was always that for me, but it was kind of like a relief for me that I needed from, the time that I had to deal with my reality. It kind of gave me an opportunity to breathe and kind of feel, safe. But with that, giving me the inspiration and the extra motivation I needed to, want better for myself and for my family as well. So, I looked at it from that standpoint that whole way of growing up saying like, yo, this is possible. Like if I'm able to do this and I'm able to see both sides of the fence of things, it helped me keep my focus and my perspective in order for me to, have my drive I needed to make it out.
This is something that comes up a lot on the show, but I grew up in a tough neighborhood when I was a kid, but I had these kind of advantages that made it so it was never a question whether I was going to be okay as a grown up. For one thing, I'm white and I was too skinny and weird looking for anybody to think that I was going to, that I was going to be in their clique. You know what I mean? And I was a weird nerd. And, I talk to people and there are these kind of lanes when you're in the hood that people can see you in and they kind of give you a little extra space. Mm-hmm. And I got the impression reading your book that there was a part of your life where it was like, look, DeMar has a special gift. Mm-hmm. He's going to be a basketball player. Mm-hmm. And that gives you a little bit of room to not have to make as many choices of, I'm not going to get involved in this or I'm not going to get involved in that.
For sure. And, I think that was kind of the era I grew up in and the morals and the inner workings of the hood, you know what I mean? Where you hear those stories where the guys older than you kind of look at you and it's like, no, you have an opportunity to make it out, stay away from this. Or, I had older cousins that protected me in a sense and knowing how to keep me away from certain things. Just my family respect in my neighborhood of understanding, that's Diane's son. He got a chance. Nah, let's make sure he make it out of here. So I had a lot of that around me, and you still fall victim to, a lot of mistakes here and there because there's not many other opportunities to, just avoid, everything that comes with being in a neighborhood.
You also, I imagine, cut a distinctive figure. How old were you when you were 6 feet tall? You're 6'6" now, right?
Yeah. That's a great question. It was early on, say middle school. Yeah, around middle school.
I remember being that tall and what it meant to walk down the street.
For sure, yeah.
Across the street from Valencia Gardens, the projects by my house, right? And be that big.
Yeah.
It's just really different.
Yeah. Yeah, it was different, especially early on was...
nobody's going to miss you.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Nobody, walking on campus, everything. I think I was looking at my yearbook from middle school the other day that I took with my basketball team. I was bigger than everybody on my team and the coach. You know what I mean? It was one of those moments to where you look at it, it's like, damn, during that time, that's why people used to call me lanky and all this stuff because everybody was just, you just don't see it that much of, people that tall. So I definitely was taller than everybody.
You grew up especially with your mom's family all around you. Mm-hmm. How many members of your family were actively in your life and, in the neighborhood, like within walking distance or,
Man.
5-minute drive?
Man, a lot. And it's so crazy that you even say that, like, because, my mom is from Compton. And realizing it when growing up, I'm thinking, when you think of my family, I'm thinking both sides of my family in a sense, because just my mom's side alone was so big. I had so many uncles, I had so many aunties, so many cousins that it seemed like every part of the city of Compton we had to go to be at my family. I may stay at my grandfather's house that stay on the other side of Compton, and that whole side of the family is up and down that street. I may go to my grandmother's house, and it's a whole family feel block to block, and it was so crazy. It was just that my whole family been so big and instrumental to me my whole childhood that it wasn't a day that went by where I wasn't around at least 5 to 10 family members.
What I was thinking of is that you have this extraordinary world of people that love you, and are, in some ways caring for you and supporting you. You also necessarily, you had a lot of people in your family who had been in jail, people in your family who were killed, people in your family whose, lives revolved around illegal stuff. And, it's a double-edged sword in the way that it isn't necessarily for other people, that you have this incredible thing of all your family members, but you also have all the pain that close to you.
For sure.
Because those are all your family members,
Yeah. But one thing that kept it together, and I never grew up judging anybody, because it was always real love there. It was family at the end of the day. Right, wrong, or indifferent. It's this is family, whether if it's a family member who get incarcerated, for whatever the crime was, we never think of the crime. You think of the love for that loved one that's going away. You miss that individual, whether if it's somebody passed, whatever it may happen. It was just one thing that always kept it connected was the love, and that's all we always had to lean on, because, growing up, you don't see nothing else. You don't see wrong in a sense, because there's so much wrong that go on, but the love is there, and you kind of lean on that more than anything.
Although I would say though that the scary part of that, especially if you're a kid, is that the love is unconditional, right? Family love is unconditional. But if you don't know what you're going to get from someone, right, that's terrifying as a child, right? So whether it's that, they got sent away, whether it's that someone was killed, whether it's just that someone is an addict and isn't reliable in some way, all of those things get mixed up in love if you're a kid, because you don't understand the way the puzzle pieces fit together,
Without a doubt, and to your point, it's so many puzzle pieces when you're young. It's hard to you grouping them all in one setting. And it's so many moving parts and so much that go on to where, to this day, it's so many things like my mom or my grandma used to say to me as a kid, to where it was you'll understand when you get older. And as I got older, you start to understand a lot of those moments and, why they look at it from a different perspective of a child. Because, to your point, we just looking at it oh man, why my cousin got to go away for so long? Man, that sucks. I don't want to hear nothing you got to say other than, could he come back sooner? And that's the tough part as a kid that causes so much confusion. And I think a lot of trauma comes from that, because we hold on to a lot of that we can't understand in that moment. And it takes till you be an adult to figure a lot of those things out.
When did you start getting in fights at school?
I mean, I was expelled from elementary for fighting. And it's so crazy, because I remember having a conversation with my oldest daughter at the beginning of the year, and we was driving from school. I was picking up from school, and I was telling her, enjoy your 5th grade year. Your friends, you graduate, you gonna graduate this year. Enjoy it, have fun, because it goes by like that. And in that moment of me telling her that, made me realize I was expelled from the 5th grade. I wasn't able to graduate because I was expelled for fighting. And I'm looking at my daughter at the time, she was 10, I couldn't imagine that. Like, I can't fathom that, you know what I mean? And I just remember when I was that age and my mom devastated, hurt, you know, that I'm getting expelled from elementary. Now I got to go to, you know, try to go to summer school and like it just was a whole mess. But I don't have graduation pictures graduating, you know. So when my daughter graduated a couple months ago, it was like a reality check for me because I remember being in the 3rd, 4th, 5th grade fighting. So yeah, I was young, you know, just a lot of that aggression and built up resentment from, you know, probably not having the aggressive nature of, you know, you having to protect yourself, you having to be tough, and me having a bunch of cousins in the household to where all we did was fight.
And I think, you know, tell me if I'm wrong, but like, even besides the aggressive part of it, which is like totally normal trauma response, there's also kind of an element when you're fighting of when you get hurt, like that pain is like a way to physicalize and control pain in your heart, you know, like.
Yeah. And it's crazy you even say that because I remember when me and my cousins used to get in trouble. My papa used to make us go outside and pick a switch. So obviously, you know, you try to look for the smallest switch. So you go in the house and you get ready, you know, get a whooping. Out of all my cousins, I was the only one who never used to cry when it was time to get a whooping. And, you know, as I got older and started to realize a lot of those moments why I didn't cry, because it was like my pain was more so internal instead of the external feeling of so much that we carry and we hold in, and we kind of like, you know, build up this sort of resentment towards whatever, you know what I mean? And then I feel like the internal pain is more painful than any physical pain you could feel, you know, and you try to exploit that by getting into altercations, getting in fights, and, you know, being destructive, you know, just doing anything being a bad kid would do.
You know, we talked about you getting in fights as a young kid, but you also were like already aware of making choices to protect yourself from the world around you. Like, you didn't drink as a teenager.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you still
No,
don't.
I've never tasted a drink, nothing. Not at all.
And I can relate to that. I made the same choice when I was a teenager for similar reasons. And on the one hand, that's a really safe and responsible choice. And it worked out well, I think. On the other hand, when I was like 30, I had to realize that I was like, oh, I'm just trying to control my life. Like, I'm trying to be the boss of everything inside me rather than living with myself.
Yeah. And I think for me, it was like, to this day, like, I remember I went to go get my wisdom teeth out. I didn't want to take no pain medicine. Like, I don't take anything for headache, Tylenol, anything. And I think from that standpoint, like, I never wanted to feel consciously reluctant on anything, you know, and I always try to tell myself and try to have like self-control and feel whatever it is that I needed to go through, because I always looked at it like it won't last. You know, yeah, it's uncomfortable, it's painful for right now, but it won't last, you know.
But like, if you're a professional athlete, one of the things that you just have to get your head around is that it's not under your control.
Right.
You have teammates.
Yeah.
And you could be Steph Curry and you're still only knocking down 45% of your three-point shots or whatever it is, right? He's missing more often than he's making it. And so like, at some point you have to learn the lesson. I can only control process. I can't control what happens.
For sure. And I think that's the beauty of sports. And I think I watch every sport and find an appreciation for sports because I use an example. Like, you know, I will watch golf sometimes. And the beauty of golf is no one will ever be able to master it. And I think once you know that, I think you become, understanding of, let me see how great I could be at this. I know nobody will ever perfect it. Nobody will ever go par 5, get a hole in one, par 4. Nobody will ever do that. I think the drive is how close to perfection can I get it to.
But how did you, when you're 6.5 feet tall and you can jump the way that you can still jump even in your mid-30s when you're 16 or 17 years old, there's not much standing in your way. Mm-hmm. So, maybe it was when you got to college, maybe it was when you got to the NBA that you had to deal with the fact that you couldn't just be better than everybody. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, like, from the basketball perspective, right, everybody knows, like, Kobe is my GOAT of all time. That's my favorite player of all time. And I just remember being 7, 8 years old, crying when I seen Kobe shoot those air balls in the playoff versus Utah. Like, I was devastated. Like, I was crying, like, because I felt so bad for him. But I remember the next year, he came back even better. Like, he took on the challenge. He didn't let those air balls break him. And that was something, like, I always carried, knowing, like, I'm not going to be perfect, but I'm not going to let nothing break me down. I'm not going to let it, like, make me want to quit. I'm going to make me want to figure it out. I used to be the reason, like, I don't play video games no more because I become so obsessive with playing. It was a point to where I remember I was playing Crash Bandicoot and I couldn't beat a level. I wouldn't stop till I beat that level and beat the whole game till I felt the satisfaction I needed. You know what I mean? And I kind of carry that over with when it comes to, whether if it's life or basketball. It's like, I know I'm never going to be able to figure everything out, but I'm willing to go through whatever I need to go through to understand more than I thought I knew before. And that's how I kind of carry a lot of stuff with myself.
When was the first time that you dealt with major depression?
That's a great question because even when I came out about it, it was, the feelings of the dark, the frustration, the pain. I had a lot of those moments very early as a teenager. Honestly, I just remember being, in a hateful, dark place when I was even at elementary, in a sense. Like, it used to be times where, you'll find ways to try to implement on hurting yourself. I remember I used to punch a hole in a wall. I used to, hit my head against the wall. I used to, try to inflict any type of physical pain on myself because whatever discomfort internally that I was feeling. Like, at the time, I'm just thinking I'm mad, but, looking back on it as you get older, it's like, man, was I in a dark place? Was I depressed? What was it that I actually was in?
And you don't even, like, one of the things about depression is, right, connected to trauma and connected to all these painful things, but also sometimes it's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes it's just the chemistry of your body.
Yeah.
And it's immense pain.
Yeah. You hit it on the head, but it's like, when you get of age and you start to really dig into that mental, emotional side of things, you really could pinpoint and look back on a lot of things and, make you question a lot of things. Like, what was this? Was this it? Was it, especially when you understand the feeling more. I think growing up the way I grew up, you don't understand the feelings at all. You can't express it. You can't verbalize it. You can't communicate it because you really don't know what it is. You just, you screaming out for help in so many different ways that, even the other people can't even realize what's going on with you, because they going through the same thing too. So that's why you have this cycle of it happening over and over and over, especially in the urban community.
You experienced, besides the kind of like day-to-day traumas that you just listed, really major traumas as well. You know, among other things, when you were a teenager, your best friend was killed while you were waiting for him to come over and hang out. And you had family members killed as well. And I wonder if now, as a, you know, man in your mid-30s, you're able to see in yourself or recognize in yourself the kinds of trauma responses that necessarily follow from that, you know, whatever it may be, right? You're at the grocery store and your heart starts beating fast or whatever. Like, are you able to see those in yourself?
Yeah, but it's more so of a, like, you know, I more so feel certain things when I'm with my kids, because it's like with my kids, when I'm around my daughter and my son, it's like my survival instinct, my guard, everything is just completely shut off, and I'm kind of in the most vulnerable state that I could be in when I'm with my kids. And if something happened that gives me like my survival instinct kick in, or something that like a worry or any type of instincts kick in when my guard is down, that's when I kind of feel those trauma responses, you know. And it's like, or even like if my daughter falls and hurt herself, it's like I find myself like my emotions of everything just shoot out the window. And it's like, you know, that's when I feel it the most, is when I'm with my kids. But, you know, when I make the conscious effort of being outside, it's like my survival instincts automatically kick in. So it's like I become numb to so much stuff because I'm aware of everything that's going on.
One of the things that I found hardest with my kids when they were young was finding the comfort within myself to be with them on their terms.
Yeah.
Sit there for an hour straight and drive a car around the mat or whatever. That was really hard for me because I realized I'm just pushing all the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's you were pushing, getting through the hood. Playing basketball is just pushing constantly.
Yeah.
And like the hardest part can be stopping.
Yeah. It definitely is. And, you know, I have moments where, you know, my kids really check that in a sense. Like it really, really checked that in so many different ways that, you know, I remember it was a day last week, I'm playing with my son and I'm trying to read something to do with work going on in the NBA. I got my phone and my son literally grabbed my phone and said, "Put your phone down, Dad," and handed me a car. And it's like, all right. It kind of like the reality check of it. Like kids definitely check you in a whole different sense that'll help you realize what you need to work on. And I think like I'm overly grateful for that, because I will find myself like just pushing and not taking a second for myself or for my kids, or just taking a second. Like, you know, at times, like I used to be a big guy who watch shows all the time. Like sometimes, like, man, take a second, whether if it's a couple hours, watch your favorite show. Like just decompress. Don't care about nothing else but the show. You know, and I find myself trying to get back to that a lot of times, especially, you know, for my kids.
Friends? Is that what the show? I'm guessing.
No. Friends wasn't.
Probably just Friends, right?
Nah, Friends wasn't. My show was Breaking Bad. That was my show.
Oh, who doesn't want to decompress and watch Breaking Bad?
Yeah.
Okay, I need to ask you about something that I was about to say is frivolous. It's not that frivolous. The greatest rapper in the world, Kendrick Lamar, is from Los Angeles, from Compton, where you're from, and has been involved in a long and intense rap beef with Drake, one of the most popular rappers in the world. It culminated in a song that Kendrick Lamar recorded called Not Like Us, that I think at this point it's safe to say, like, as long as hip hop lasts, it will be in the pantheon. Like it is one of the greatest, most significant hip hop records ever recorded. He raps about you in there, and also you're in the video.
Yeah.
I'm glad D-Rose came home, y'all didn't deserve him neither. From Alondra down to Central, better not speak on Serena. And your homeboy needs subpoena, that moving flax.
And I wonder, like, did you get I heard an interview with DJ Mustard about like getting the call, because no one mentioned to him that they were using his beat for it until a friend of his just called him and heard it on the radio or whatever. But like, I heard about him getting the call, right?
Uh-huh.
I wonder, like, did somebody call you and say like, hey, DeMar, you know that thing with Kendrick and Drake? Anyway, you're in the new song.
Yeah. No, he actually told me himself.
Okay.
Ended up talking to him, and he brought it up. It was crazy. It was more of a thing, like someone you actually know. Like, you don't think nothing else out of it, like out the norm. It's kind of like your friend asking you to do something, and it's like, all right, man. Like, what I mean? It was more so one of those, like, I cool. All right, I got you. I do it. It wasn't.
And you went down. You're in the video.
Yeah. I didn't think nothing of it in the meanwhile, because it was actually a thing from somebody you know. You know what I mean? It's kind of like your friend up the street asking you, knocking on the door, saying, "Man, ride with me to the store." You're not gonna ask where you going. Nothing. He's like, "All right, let me put my shoes on."
DeMar, let me put it this way. Kendrick Lamar gets on the phone he sends me a text message, says, "I need you in Houston to stock groceries at the Piggly Wiggly." I'd be like, "Oh yeah, okay. See you tomorrow, Kendrick." That's
literally how it went. Just like, it was like really one of those things. A friend across the street knocked on the door, said, "Man, come with me to blah, blah, blah." It's like, all right, let me get my shoes, put it on. Not knowing where you going. You know what I mean? It's kind of like one of those, like.
But it also, I mean, like, you're also aware of the immense resonance because, you made your career in a second home in Toronto, which is sort of like Drake's home. And Drake is more deeply tied to the Raptors than any other celebrity to any, like maybe Spike Lee and the Knicks. But like, other than that, right? Like, that guy has lived and breathed the Raptors and they him, right? And, the reason that you're one of the subjects of the song is because you came home to California, where you're going to be playing for the Kings, but it's an offhanded thing. It's not like you're not the center of the subject, but like, you knew this is a big deal for me to show up for Compton in this, like.
Yeah, and I think that's more so how I looked at it. Like, this is for my city. This is where I'm from. That's where I was born. Without this city, I wouldn't be anything. It's just a city that molded me and shaped me. And, it was kind of tricky for me because, first place I left to and went to after I left Compton was Toronto for 9 years. That, they molded me, they shaped me. I learned so much from that place. I gave my all to that place while I played there.
It's very clear in the book that like, if you had your choice, you would have stayed there your whole career.
1,000%. And I think any real person understands that. And understand my love and my appreciation and everything I gave to not just that city, just to, to that whole country, and I think from the standpoint, it's easy to get overlooked thinking, I just engulfed it myself in a situation that was going on where more so I'm looking at it like, I'm from Compton, California. This is a good friend of mine, and I know it's so easy to look at it from the standpoint of like Drake was a good friend of mine too, and it looked like
right.
It looked like however it looked, But at the end of the day, I'm from Compton, California, and I think anybody who knows me personally will understand that and know from my perspective what it is.
What about when you're dancing on stage at the show?
That was just, I think that was the excitement of it being like, man, everybody in here from all walks of LA in here. And it was like more of like a celebration, and I think that part of it don't get talked about enough, that, it was more of a celebration for everybody from LA. It felt so cool being around every neighborhood, all the rappers that we sit up here and don't get a chance to be able to see in the same room that's from LA. That was like my excitement from it more so than anything.
When you're a professional athlete, you don't really get to choose where you live and work, which is, something I don't think people really wrap their heads around when they think about the life of a professional athlete. But, you early in your career in the pro leagues in the United States, you don't get to choose at all. And even later on, you don't have that much choice. And even, you're from Los Angeles, you wanted to play in Los Angeles. Well, you can only choose between two bosses.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm from San Francisco. If I want to move home and work in San Francisco, there's a lot of people I could work for.
Yeah.
Right? It's a very limited set of choices.
Yeah.
So I imagine it's a big deal that at this point in your career, you're headed to Sacramento to play for the Kings. That's not Los Angeles. That's a 6 or 7 hour drive away, but it's a lot more Los Angeles than Toronto is. You can take a 40-minute flight home and be home at the end of the day. And that must be a really big deal for you at this point in your life.
Yeah. I mean, everything happens how it needs to happen. Me playing in Toronto for 9 years, San Antonio for 3 years, Chicago for 3 years. Now going in my 16th season, having the opportunity to be closer to home. Who knows? This may be my last couple that, I put my all into and have this opportunity to make the most out of it. Having the opportunity for family to, like you said, take a 40-minute flight and be there for me more than ever than my whole career. I think that's something I need, and I think no better timing than now. And I think that's the cool thing and the special thing to have this opportunity going forward.
There's this thing that people say in sports, which is flags fly forever, right? The idea is that the thing that matters is winning the championship and nothing else, everything else pales in its comparison, right? There's 30 teams in most of the big sports leagues, 30-ish teams. People's great professional athletes' careers are 15, 18, 20 years, the best of the best. Most professional athletes get a few years. So even if you are Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and you play for 20, you still have odds against you that you'll even win one championship. You haven't won a championship in your career. Do you think it will be okay if you retire not having won one?
Yeah, I mean, gotta be okay. I like I said, that goes back to me just knowing that I didn't cheat the game. I didn't cut short corners. I didn't make excuses. If it happens, it happens. If it don't, it don't. I can hang my head on the fact that, like I said, I love the game to its purest nature. I gave everything I could, and at the end of the day, I was telling somebody this the other day, it's like, at the end of the day, all I ever wanted to do on top of winning a championship was be respected by my peers, and the respect and, the admiration that I have for my peers means more than anything to me, and that's what you do it for, is to be respected by the ones that do the same thing as you. And I think, when I walk away from the game, regardless how it happens, the love and the respect that I have for my peers mean everything to me.
Well, Jamar, I'm so grateful for your time talking to me and your story and your book. It was really nice to get to talk to you.
Thank you. I appreciate you.